too. And we're live.
All right. We're letting everybody load in to the audience here. And I'm out of Fairfax today. Hopefully everybody's a little sunny, not too rainy. Give it just a minute and we'll get going. Kerry, where are you at today?
I'm in New Orleans, and we're actually having really good weather. Like, we're actually getting a spring, which is great because the humid and the sauna weather is coming, and so we're appreciating it right now.
Is it Jazz Fest now?
It is. Well, it was. It just finished, but now we've got French Quarter Fest. We're in our festival season, so it doesn't end until beginning of July.
Never ends.
In essence. Yeah.
Always a party.
Like, we get little breaks, but then August is usually a break, but even after August, at the end of August, there's a big fest in the French Quarter as well. So,
all right.
Yeah.
So, Bill's in Orlando.
He knows the sweat.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not, the humidity. I tell people you're not really sweating. You're walking into water. Like, it's just kind of always wet in the air. So
we got just another 30 seconds and we're going to get going. And as people load in and arrive, and we'll get going from there.
I don't get too loud. Where am I? Yeah. Oh, there's my audio little thing. Yeah. Yes, Bill. Exactly.
All right.
Yeah. I remember my third year here, I was in college, and it was December, and I was in shorts and a tank top, and it was really hot. And I was just like really frustrated because I was actually born in Montana. And I was like, I just want to wear a coat. Like, I want a reason to wear a coat. And then this year we got snow. So
there you go, for a day.
Yeah. Well, actually, because it stuck around, which we were shocked at. We actually thought it would all melt away. But then for like 3 days, it was just there. Because we also don't know what to do with it. So we're like, well, like, we don't have plows. We don't have any of that stuff.
All right. We're going to get going here. Hey, I'm Mike Fisher, Vice President of Client Experience and Sales at Charity Engine. And over the past 15 years, I've been working in the nonprofit fundraising arena in the CDO, VP of development roles, and similar. In 2014, I joined Charity Engine, my favorite CRM, to help other nonprofit professionals expand their fundraising. And during my travels, I've met many great nonprofit leaders with a wealth of knowledge and experience. And I want to invite them to meet you and you to meet them. So during this series, Elevate Fundraising, we've been connecting a lot of different dots. The last one we did public service announcements, and a natural connection there is, well, if you want a celebrity in a PSA, how do you do that? So our guest today is Kerry Cahill, who portrays Diane on The Walking Dead and has a long list of other acting roles to her credit. And we're going to discuss how charity endorsements work for nonprofits. Kerry, over to you.
All right. So does everyone see the slide? Yes, we do. Good. So this is me. That's me on the red carpet. I look much fancier. And then what we're going to kind of go over today is, what's a celebrity anyway? How would they fit into your marketing plan, long-term and short-term? What do they offer you? What do you offer them? And then what are your goals? And then what are agreements and contracts for, and how do they help? So first thing I'm going to go into is, what's a celebrity anyway? And this will lead in a little bit to long-term versus short-term, because what a celebrity can do is basically help you get light on your organization, right? They can get you attention. They can either keep doing it long-term, or they can do it like you have a big gala and you need them to come and be a presence, right? So I picked some celebrities that might be lesser known on purpose. So really, the definition of a celebrity is just a person who's famous, celebrated, and known. That's it. And the thing for an organization to pay attention to is, what are they known for? Who knows them? What demographic, what area, what geographical area? Where are they known, right? That's that whole thing. How does this relate to your organization? Like, is this, they're famous, they'll get people to show up? Or is this, they are very outspoken about this issue and they will bring other qualities and other like information to the organization? And then what kind of relationship can you build with them so it can be consistent, even if it's not like they're your spokesperson, right? And then I will talk about references. So these are 4 people that not everyone knows, but I do. And that's part of the reason I talked about him. So Chimamanda Adichie is an author out of Nigeria. She talks a lot about feminism. She had a beautiful book about grief after COVID. She has a really famous TED Talk about telling different stories, about writing from different places. So if you're a nonprofit that has to do with literature, that has to do with underserved communities in America, or maybe places where people didn't get their stories told as much, she might be a really interesting keynote speaker to bring in, right? But we have to know that she's really hyper into literature. So what the demographic that knows her, you need to pay attention to, right? So this is Morris Bart. I doubt anyone out of Louisiana knows who he is, but he's super famous in New Orleans and Metairie in the whole New Orleans area. He's really philanthropic, but he's also a personal injury lawyer with really hilarious commercials and billboards. But people love him. They know him. And if he's going to come to your event, or you like want him to come, like be like, we do a lot of parades, like Grand Marshal or like the king of it, whatever, that's something where you're going to get attention because he's coming. Right. And he is not someone you would typically think is a celebrity, which is part of the reason I put him on here, is because what he really is someone who connects to the world of New Orleans, who connects to the people, and that you don't have to have a long-term relationship with in terms of him being a spokesperson, because what he really can offer is a spotlight. The other one I put in here is the horse from The Walking Dead. His name is Blade. I have actually ridden him. And he does tricks, and he did them in the show. So out of Georgia, if you're a horse rescue, if you work with animals, if you even work in like a place where the demographic you're trying to reach really loves the show, The Walking Dead, he might be a good get for you, because Tommy Turvey lives in New Orleans, in Georgia, and he is the animal wrangler for Walking Dead. So he can bring other things too, and he can do circus tricks. He's out of a circus family. So what I'm trying to do is get everybody to kind of think a little bit more outside of the box in terms of, you don't just need like Keanu Reeves or Nicole Kidman, right? Or Bono, right? U2 is famous for giving attention to places, right? But who is out of where you are? Who does everyone where you are know? And what do they know them for? So this is the other actress, and I'm going to mispronounce her last name, but she plays Poppy Lee on a show called Mythic Quest that not everybody knows. But if you're really into video games, it's a takeoff of World of Warcraft. It talks a lot about coding, creating a game. It's really funny. It's a little blue. It's like there's a really, I think it's J.F. Murray Abrams is on it. He's really hilarious. So she might be something where if you're trying to get tech into the youth, if you're trying to fundraise for a program that goes around high schools and raises money to help kids code, she might be a great celebrity for you, because that demographic might know her. And so that's kind of where I wanted to drive, is like, they don't have to be famous all around the world. Often those folks don't necessarily have the time to be a spokesperson. So one of the people I'll talk about is like Jason Momoa. He went and did this whole video for a group, you can see it on his Instagram, out of Australia that does wildlife rehabilitation. But that's all he did. And it went on his Instagram. It went live. It reached all the millions of his followers. And he doesn't have to keep doing anything, because that spotlight is what they wanted from him, right? So that's, I think, the ways to think about it in terms of celebrity. Like Kevin Fowler, if you're in Central Texas, most people don't know who he is. I would go because he's a great singer. He's a Central Texas country music artist. I know him because I'm out of that area a little bit. And so think of things like that, right? Like one of the areas, I grew up in a really small towns, but one of the towns I lived in was Cameron. The most famous person in our town was the guy who ran karaoke nights, and his name was Bobby. If you were going to do a fundraiser in that town, and you're a nonprofit that's just trying to like do something in that town, and you invited him to do karaoke, you would get more people. And it has nothing to do with whether he is interested in your nonprofit activities. He has to care because he has to sign up to be part of it. But you really need that attention. And so that's what I kind of want to talk about, like what we mean by celebrity anyway. So think outside the box, think in terms of what they're known for. There's a lot of famous woodworkers on YouTube. What if you're doing like crafts or this or that, and you want to get attention? That's stuff to think about. And then who do you contact to get these people? So this is all over the board, and it all depends on what their position is. Morris Bart, you can probably call his office, email him, send him an invitation to a party, talk to his receptionist, right? He's a lawyer. He is not a celebrity, right? If you're an actor or you're in film, there's a website called pro.imdb.com. And we as actors actually pay to get on there so that we can control our resume on there. So if you see a bio on there, usually somebody like a publicist, an agent, or whoever put it on there. I actually put my bio on my IMDb. But what IMDb Pro does is give you access to know who is their agent, who is their personal appearance person, who is their lawyer, who is their production company. And it gives you literally the phone numbers of these places to contact, right? Search engines are your friend too. If it's a musician, like who manages them? Who manages Kevin Fowler? Who manages Tim McGraw, right? There was a lot of hurricane aid in Mississippi and Louisiana after Katrina from Faith Hill and Tim McGraw, because that's where they're from, right? How do we get a hold of them? The other idea is explore their social media. If they are someone who posts a lot about like themselves, fashion, images of who they are, pretty images of them. There's a lot of actors and actresses who do that. And you can look through probably 20 posts and almost every one of them is an image of them. What you know is that they don't post about issues very often. That is neither bad nor good. That is something for you to know. So that might be someone that is good for like a guest at a big gala. But if you want someone who's going to post about issues or your issue that you're dealing with or you're trying to raise money for, you might want to look for people who post different things. See what posts they've pinned to the top. See if they're on certain websites. Like Facebook generally is an older crowd. Blue Sky, like Instagram, more middle age, right? So figure out who you're trying to reach and who is popular, and then see who they follow. What's pinned to the top, right? So for mine, I have 3 things pinned right now. One is a post for veterans and access to like funds and like things that they can go and get counseling, etc. And one is a popo, which I'm not sure everyone's heard of, but are these amazing rats who sniff out landmines and tuberculosis. They save lives. They help refurbish farmland. They can clear a tennis court in 30 minutes of landmines and tell everybody where they are. It's amazing. And then another one is called Buy Now, which is a documentary. So clearly I don't mind posting about certain things, right? So check and see who you're interested in and what they are interested in, what they follow. Because if they like follow a certain number of different accounts, you can kind of get a general gauge of what they might be interested in. The other thing to know is like The Rock, people of that ilk, they might post on their own social media, but they don't always run it. So who you're contacting, it goes into like 50 million messages that they receive every day on Instagram, on wherever. And so reaching out to a manager, a talent manager, like managers are who I would say you want to reach out to first because they navigate the entire career of a person. Personal appearance tend to means convention, like a convention where like you go and you sign autographs. So those are things to know. And I'm actually going to go in and show us. So this is, it looks small on my screen, but this is Jason Momoa's contact list from IMDb Pro. And this is mine. So he doesn't have a personal appearance person, but he has his talent agent. And he also has his own production companies, right? So one of the things you know is, okay, he's with William Morris. One of the things I also encourage people to do is to reach out. If you have a big event and you're like doing something huge, reach out to these agencies because you may not know who's interested in what you do. And here's an example. My mom died of leukemia. I am not super public about that, but my agents and managers know that. So if you reached out to my manager, Centera, and said, hey, we're doing this really big event. We'd love to get some celebrities involved. Here's the issue. Do you have anyone who's interested? And they emailed their people. You would get me because I would totally come and totally help for a leukemia nonprofit fundraiser, right? And so Jason Momoa is really public about plastic usage, the cleaning the ocean, things like that. But he may have other things he's interested in. And William Morris may have a client they're trying to get a little more press who really cares about something. I have a friend who's not really that famous yet, but will be. And one of her things is her brother committed suicide and suffered from mental illness. If you reached out to her agent and said, hey, we are doing a mental health fundraiser about this and this, and we would love to see people involved, she would totally sign up. So that's the other thing is you don't have to reach the celebrity as much as you can reach the people who can go, oh, we have these people who would want to be interested. I hope that tracks. And then we'll definitely get in questions. The other thing to think of, and this follows on the PSA class that happened last time. Is this a long-term or short-term relationship? If it's long-term, let's get some guidelines, right? Are they spotlighting you, or are they going to help be fuel for your engine to keep you going? What do you want from them? This I talked about already. Online presence. Does it mesh with yours? Like if you are a nonprofit that deals with fundraising for rehabs, it is not always the worst thing. Like if you look at Matthew Perry, he relapsed publicly sometimes, but that is an addiction issue. So relapsing in public does not mean that you do not invite that person to come and speak. In fact, they might be able to talk about that, and that might get you more attention. So even having a negative public something doesn't actually mean it's bad. And you guys have to figure out where you want that in long-term, short-term. Short-term example that I think is really great is anything like St. Jude does really publicly. They had Jennifer Aniston, excuse me. They had Jennifer Aniston. They had all these huge A-list celebrities do this massive telethon for them, but they only had to come for that one day. And so that actually helps, because when you are that busy and you're filming that many films, if somebody can say, hey, we're going to do this cool telethon, this one script, and it's to raise funds for cancer research for children, please come. They can do that. And that's more viable for them than a long-term relationship, right? And then be specific about expectations. And this is where you'll get into like goals and contracts. A contract isn't just to protect you and that other person. It's also to talk through what you guys actually want and what they will do, right? So this gets to specifics where you can kind of clarify that and get through that and make it clear. And then this is something where Brene Brown talks about this actually a lot, is capacity and capability, right? Think about what this person can actually do. So I am a big veterans advocate and a big mental health advocate. I actually do my own research on suicide. I am QPR trained, which is a CPR version of mental health, right? And I can explain that later, but not right now. But that is not the norm, right? So you will get celebrities that are really well-meaning, really do care, but they cannot bring their costume. They don't technically own it. I do not own what Diane wears. So if you want me to come in that, I can't. Now you get people like Deadpool, who he stole it and he's fine. He owns that movie. He gets to do that. I am not that powerful, right? So know about that. Know their personality. Know what they can talk about offhand. And maybe you have to make a script for them, right? Because you really care about something doesn't mean you know enough about it. Ashton Kutcher knows a lot about sex trafficking because he actually gets into it, right? Gary Sinise does a lot with veterans issues, right? So just know your celebrity. I have a good friend that when I throw parties to raise money, he shows up, he's a blast, and he'll take photos with everybody. That's where it ends. He loves doing that because it's a way for him to help, but he's not a long-term commitment in terms of on a board or like helping with a spokesperson. So those are things to like really think about, is like, what do you want them to do? What do you want? What do they want from you? Right? Is this helping them get attention on an issue they care about? Is this helping them get attention? Right? I hope this is all making sense. I'm looking forward to questions. Okay. So I'm just going to recap all that. What's a celebrity anyway? How do they fit into your marketing plan? Like, one of the reasons I'm going to come back to this is because I was the national spokesperson for an organization. And as much as I loved it, they didn't quite know what to do with me. And I actually would reach out and go, hey, I would love to do an Instagram live and go into this and maybe we can do this. And they go, yeah, okay, hold on. Because they were kind of overloaded and they had a committee process. And so what happened with that is I didn't get to do as much as I wanted to do. And they also wanted me to be exclusive. So I didn't sign back up and they didn't get another spokesperson. And part of that is because it just they weren't ready for that kind of role. They were ready for like a guest at a gala. And so also just be honest with yourself about what's your capacity and capability and what do you need and what's that person's, right? I had the capacity and the capability to go and do these Instagram lives because I really care about this issue and in terms of veterans mental health and veterans health in general, right? And not everybody does. So those two things, be really super honest about. And goals, agreements, and contracts, I talked about that. Yeah, and we're at 11:20, and I really do want to open it for questions now because I think we'll get a lot. Yeah, okay. Did that all make sense? And what questions do we have? Excuse me.
Hey, Kerry. The first question that was sent in was, are all nonprofits of any size, I know you kind of covered this a little bit, are they smart to use a celebrity? So are you too small or too, obviously not too big, but are you too small to ever use a celebrity, or can everybody use one?
I think everybody can use one. I think you have to know what you're using it for. So is it something where you're a small nonprofit and you're going to throw a fundraiser and that celebrity coming will help get attention for the fundraiser? Absolutely use it. If you are small and you don't have the staff to necessarily support a long-term relationship with that person, just know that, right? Yeah. And know what you're able to do. And so I tend to think that celebrities, and again, remember, a celebrity is a lot of different things, can help because they will get light on you, right? And that's really what a celebrity gives you.
Okay, great. Adrian has a really good question, because I know, doing this myself years ago, when I first met you, I had this same question and I had to figure it out myself. So what is best? Should we set our expectations at the first meeting, or should we be flexible and hear what the celebrity wants?
I think you have to treat it as a negotiation, because remember, you've never met this person, and the persona is not always the person. So what you do have to walk in is a clear idea of what you want and what your expectations are. And then you have to figure out what they can give, right? And you have to figure out who you're going to be really talking to, because sometimes they'll have a publicist and they may not technically agree with them, and you may not know that.
Yeah.
Right. And so you have to also figure out who is the one who actually calls the shots on this, and who is the person that you're going to be in the most contact with. Because what happens, particularly for acting, is I actually can't really use my phone on set very often. So it actually gets difficult. Like if you're giving a rock concert for 4 hours, you cannot text someone back. And so you have to realize, like, they basically have a full-time job and they're going to be doing this on the side. So you have to figure out who your main point of contact would be. But I would say always walk in with your expectations and needs, and then see what they can do.
And Kristen has a very interesting question here. What guidelines would you give in simply trying to get a celebrity that you know is interested in your subject to make a charitable gift? I know that's a little outside of what we were talking about here earlier, but what would you suggest if someone is connected to your subject? Is there a way to approach them about a charitable gift? Do you have any hints on that?
I would say what you want to do is, timing wise, this is something I've recently learned, is try to do it towards the end of a fiscal year, because that's when they need tax write-offs. So think about timing, and think about who you can connect to them. So one of the things that, the keynote speech I just did for this Louisiana thespians fundraiser, the reason I got to do it is because a friend of mine from college still knows me and just was like, hey, would you be willing to do this? So some of that is figure out who can connect to them and which person they can connect to, right? And ask and be specific. Do you want them to be a matching gift? Are you doing a major capital fundraising thing and you're going to ask them to be a matching person? Do they want to be anonymous? Right. And I think that's about connecting to someone who represents them. So for Jason Momoa, it might be his production company. It might be his legal rep. Right. And you can do that sort of reach out. This is one of the things I forgot to say, is never underestimate an invitation to a party or even an invitation to give. Right. Because you have to let them know this is happening, because they won't. Right. And you can direct message them on Instagram sometimes. I tend to tell people too, that if there's a major issue, they follow, don't be afraid to tag them in a thing hey, I would like you to see this. Don't do it all the time, because that does get too much. But really what you're trying to do is get them that information. You have to figure out how to get that to them. Does that track? Because that is a really you kind of just have to get to somebody who knows them, and you will be surprised at who that might be.
And then Taylor asked, thank you for the great info. Do you have any recommendations for making our request for partnership stand out to a manager who's drowning in emails and voicemails?
One, make it simple and bullet pointed and clear, and then make it clear what this can give them, right? So this can give them attention, this can this. And then what you can also do is, like I said before, like reach out to that manager with a set of like, hey, we really want this, but do you have other people? Because if everybody wants Jason Momoa, but there are other people out there who care just as much about the ocean, right? And so if you're willing to like not get that perfect person, you're also able to get these other things. And so what I would say is be as clear and simple and straightforward as possible, and then be available for a different answer that still helps you. And there's a couple here that I'm seeing that celebrities are, so the expected to be paid for providing an endorsement, that all depends on you and on them, right? I just want my expenses covered, right? And I do get paid for keynote speeches sometimes, but that really does depend on the celebrity, who they are, what they expect, and what they want, right? So I tend to not speak names, but there was a huge fundraiser after the Fort Hood shooting where my dad died, and there was a specific country music artist who wanted a lot of money to come play, and they couldn't pay it, so he didn't come. So that did affect my coloring of him, but I don't actually know if they ever spoke to him or if they just spoke to his representation, because representation gets 10 to 20% of what an artist makes. So sometimes the person you're talking to wants there to be money, the celebrity may not care. And that is just a weird thing to navigate. Like for me, my publicist actually would try to push for more money for certain things and want me to make money off things. And I had to be a hard no. But she at least talked to me. And I don't have a publicist anymore. But yeah, so there's no clear right answer for some of this, right? So keynote speeches, expect to pay someone. But I would say if you want them to like share, do a PSA, that tends to be something you shouldn't have to pay for, because if you're making millions of dollars, I do tend to feel you should be able to donate your time for that. So
I think
maybe
that's
not a plane ticket.
I think that's a great point, because I think a lot of people don't always focus on, oh, celebrity, they did a big movie, they make lots of money and all that. But when you really think about it, celebrities are people. If you cover the expenses, it helps tremendously. It just takes the burden. It really kind of like opens up the question, do they want to help or not? Like, hey, we'll pay for your airline ticket, we'll pay for your meals and your housing while you're here. And it just kind of takes the burden off at Mark, where you a lot of times you really don't have to pay, but like when Kerry and I have done a few together, it's always like, we'll cover the expenses, just let us know, that way the burden is on us to work together and not worry about money. Money doesn't get in the middle.
Yeah. And some of us don't make as much as you think we do. I'm going to laugh really loud about that, but yeah. So yeah. And then let me see what else.
Yeah, I think we got time for one more. And we look at Maria's question here. We're a small nonprofit in Montana that's helping to bring mental health services to rural communities, but we also help with large areas. Do you think it's a good idea to work with another nonprofit and a celebrity? The other nonprofit is also an advocate. So sharing a celebrity between nonprofits, what's your thought on that?
I think totally, because what that also helps is, one, you can split the cost of like a plane ticket, and then you can also team up in terms of like, if you guys are both working on a PSA and it gets you both attention. I tend to think that if you're a small nonprofit, working with others is always good, because it just takes a lot of pressure off. And like Montana, so one of the things I think of is like, I don't think people realize like Bill Pullman lived there forever, right? So you've got Paul Walker actually had connections in Montana. And so Montana is one of those places where you actually have a ton of celebrities who live there and spend summers there. And so think about that. And then think about too, in terms of like, if you're trying to reach Montana ranchers or Montana small towns, who are people they pay attention to? Because that might be like an expert, veterinarian. It may not be the celebrity. It may be I'm trying to think of who else, because my Aunt Sue still has a ranch up there, and so do my aunts and cousins, and yeah. And so like my Aunt Sue isn't really gonna honestly know who a celebrity is. She is going to know who is like a major veterinarian that's really smart, or things like that, right? Or something she follows, right? Maybe a really successful county commissioner. And so think in terms of like who you're trying to reach to. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Well, Kerry, thank you. It was a great half an hour and a great follow up from Wendy Weatherall's PSA event last month. So it was like a great big healthy sandwich here of knowledge. So thank you, and great to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Yeah, and thank you. And of course, there's tons of questions, but like it's navigatable, and just use your connections and use your board. Your board should help you with this. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.